The cough came from the dark corner of the cabin where the boy slept, each spasm pulling a thin, brittle sound from lungs already fighting the cold.
Anthony, he can't stop. The cold is eating him alive.
Anthony knelt by the hearth and pressed his palm to the stones. They were cold, the last embers gray.
The fire's almost out. By morning, this cabin will be an icebox.
What do? We can't let Eli freeze.
Somewhere in the back of his mind, Anthony remembered a cottage he'd seen as a boy, far across the mountains, a bed built like a cupboard, doors that closed against the night cold.
A bed you can close up, like a cabinet. My grandfather told me about them.
A box to sleep in? It sounds like a coffin.
Anthony grabbed a scrap of bark and a piece of charcoal and began to draw. Rough lines took shape, a wooden box with sliding doors, just big enough for a family. He had no lumber, no certainty, only a desperate sketch and the sound of his son's cough rattling through the dark. By first light, Anthony had dragged frost-covered pine boards into the lean-to. He set the worn ruler against the grain and marked his first cut.
I don't understand how a wooden box beats the cold, but Eli can't take many more nights like the last.
It's not the wood that keeps you warm, Maggie. It's the small, still pocket of air inside. That's what we need to trap.
Before she could answer, hoofbeats crunched the snow outside. Kevin McCrae rode up with a smirk already carved onto his red-bearded face.
Well, ain't that a sight? Anthony Harker building his own coffin while he's still breathing.
Call it what you want, Kevin. It'll keep my boy warm when your jokes freeze in your throat.
You are a fool, Harker. A man needs a fire, not a pine box.
Anthony turned back to his work. His hands moved on their own, fitting a side panel into the groove, while Kevin's laughter faded into the mountain wind.
His cough is worse tonight, Anthony. He's burning up inside and freezing on the outside.
By nightfall, the box bed frame stood against the cabin wall, half-finished and rough, but standing. And in Anthony's ears, Kevin's scorn still echoed louder than the wind. He worked through the morning and into the dusk, planing the last board until it fit seamless against the frame.
It's finished. For better or worse, it's ready.
Eli stared at the wooden box, his thin fingers clutching the blanket tighter.
I don't want to go in there, Pa. It's so small.
It's not a cage, son. It's a shield. The cold can't reach us inside.
Margaret knelt and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her warmth against his shivering frame. Then, one by one, they climbed into the wooden chamber, the mattress rustling beneath them.
Light the candle, Anthony. Don't let it be dark.
He lit the wick, set it on the small shelf, and slid the door closed. The world outside vanished. Only the flame remained, a tiny flickering pulse visible through the vent hole as the night closed in. Morning arrived in a bitter stillness. Hoarfrost laced every wall, but inside the closed bed, the air was dense with trapped heat.
It's warm. How is it warm?
The box trapped our breath. It's like a second skin.
Beyond the bed's thin walls, the cabin sat silent and white as a tomb, frost climbing the window panes.
It worked, Anthony. I didn't think it would. But it did.
When they slid the door open, the cabin air hit like a frozen blade. Frost sparkled on every surface outside the bed's tight sanctuary. Outside, Kevin rode past on his way to the timber claim, his breath clouding the air. He saw the window clear of ice, the dawn light catching on the glass.
Lucky night. That pine coffin won't hold when the real cold comes.
Anthony watched Kevin disappear into the tree line, then turned back to the box bed. One night was not a winter, but for this morning at least, the cold had been kept at bay, and in that pocket of trapped warmth, a fragile hope took root. 3 nights later, the cough returned. Not as vicious as before, but enough to wake Margaret from a dead sleep.
He's coughing again. Maybe the air in there is too damp. It's like a sickness breeding in that box.
I'll open the vent a little wider. More air should clear it out.
He carved a larger opening, but with every inch, the precious heat slipped away. That night, the bed felt cool for the first time. Margaret shivered under the quilts.
We're trading one danger for another. He can't breathe that damp, but now he'll freeze.
Kevin McCrae made sure every man in the valley knew that Anthony's box bed was breeding sickness.
I hear Eli's still hacking. That box of yours is making it worse.
You've never spent a night in it. Kevin, your opinion means nothing.
But even as he spoke the words, a seed of doubt had been planted deep, and the closed bed no longer felt like a sanctuary. That night, the wind shifted suddenly, howling down from the peaks with a voice like grinding stone.
We have to seal it tight tonight, Maggie. No vents. Every crack will steal heat.
But Eli's cough, if the air goes bad, will suffocate in there.
There's no choice. The cold will kill us faster than bad air. We'll keep the candle lit. If it dies, we know to get out.
He blocked the last vent with a folded rag, and the outside world vanished with a hollow thud. Inside, the candle flame stood straight and tall for now.
It's so quiet. I can hear my own heart.
The storm battered the cabin, but the bed held a fragile pocket of stillness, breath misting, the flame beginning to waver.
Pa, the light's getting smaller.
The flame shrank to a blue tongue, then guttered. In the sudden dark, only the sound of their breathing answered, and the storm's distant roar. The storm broke just before dawn, leaving the world encased in a silence deeper than the cold itself.
Anthony, we're alive. I can feel my fingers for the first time in hours.
The still air trapped our warmth. Eli, how's your chest feel this morning?
Better, Pa. I can breathe deep without coughing.
When he slid the door open, the cabin air was a frozen knife, but inside the box the memory of warmth still held. At Kevin McCrae's place, the water barrel had split its seams and frost painted the inside walls white. Kevin sat wrapped in every blanket he owned, his breath pluming in the dead air. Outside, his horse stood rigid, a layer of rime ice on its back, the pump frozen solid. From his window, the Harker cabin looked impossibly serene, its glass still clear. The box bed had proven itself, but now a harder test waited, one that had nothing to do with wood and cold. 2 hours after dawn, a frantic pounding rattled the Harker door.
Anthony, it's not for me. It's the Harlow baby. She's turning blue.
What do you want me to do, Kevin?
Behind Kevin, Mrs. Harlow stumbled forward, a wraith in the snow, clutching a bundle that barely moved.
Please, Mr. Harker. They say your bed kept your boy alive. My little one can't last another night.
I'll carry the lumber, Harker. Just tell me what to do.
Anthony looked at the woman, then at Kevin, the man who had mocked him, now stripped of all pride.
Get the sled. We'll need every scrap of dry pine I've got left.
He grabbed his tools and stepped out into the bitter wind. The Harlow baby's life now bound to the same fragile design. Behind him, the Harker box bed sat empty, its door still open, a silent promise that this was about more than one family. They reached the Harlow cabin just as the wind began to bite again. Anthony barely paused, measuring and marking, while Kevin unloaded the sled.
All right, Harker. I still think it's crazy, but tell me where to nail.
I don't need your approval. Kevin, I need your hands. Hold this frame steady.
The baby's weak cry pierced the cabin, and Mrs. Harlow's desperate prayers filled the gaps between hammer blows. Hour after hour, the two men worked in a rhythm born of necessity, the frozen cabin echoing with the sounds of survival.
It's ready. Bring the child.
Mrs. Harlow laid the baby inside, her hands trembling, her whispered prayer barely audible. Anthony sealed the door, and the tiny flame inside flickered through the vent, a fragile heartbeat in the dark. Then there was nothing to do but wait, the silence inside the box as heavy as the cold outside. Dawn came pale and silent. Then, from inside the wooden box, a thin, defiant wail rose, weak but alive.
She's warm. Look at her cheeks. She has color again.
Tears spilled down Mrs. Harlow's face as she pulled the tiny bundle close, her whispered thanks filling the frozen room.
I owe you an apology, Harker. That box of yours, it saved her.
When Anthony returned home, Margaret was waiting at the door, her face tight with hope and fear.
The baby. Did she make it through the night?
She's alive, Maggie. The box held.
Word spread through the settlement like fire through dry kindling. By nightfall, the box bed was no longer just a curiosity. Kevin stood by the frozen barrel outside his own cabin, staring at the Harker place. The mockery had gone silent. The winter still had teeth, but for the first time, the valley began to whisper not of dread, but of a different kind of warmth, one that could be closed inside a box. In the trading post, Kevin searched dusty crates. A memory stirred. His grandmother's tales of cupboard beds in the old country. He found a frayed book titled Homes of the Northlanders and opened it with trembling hands. Inside, diagrams of staff beds in Iceland and lit clothes in Brittany. Families sealed in wooden cabinets, just like Harker's.
It wasn't his invention. It's how whole families survived the mountain winters.
He turned to a page dated 1685. A peasant family sealed inside a great wooden bedbox, their faces peaceful in sleep.
I mocked him for a coffin, but this was the poor man's shield for hundreds of years.
He closed the book. The weight of his ignorance felt heavier than any wood. Before dawn, he wrapped the book in oilcloth and rode back toward the valley. He clutched the book to his chest, knowing this truth would change everything. The box bed was not folly. It was a forgotten wisdom, reborn in the cold. Kevin arrived at the Harker cabin, breathless, the book clutched against his coat. Snow clung to his beard as he dismounted.
Anthony, open the door. It's not new. Your bed, I mean, it's in a book from the old country.
Anthony took the book, his calloused hands gentle on the brittle pages. The diagrams were unmistakable.
My grandfather told me about these. I'd forgotten. They called them closed beds in the old tongue.
Whole villages used them, Harker. For centuries, you didn't invent it. You remembered what everyone forgot.
For a long moment, both men stood in the quiet cabin, the weight of centuries pressing down on a simple pine box.
Then it wasn't my idea at all. It was theirs, the ones who came before. And it saved Eli anyway.
No, Anthony. The idea came from you. The knowledge came from them. And now it's ours.
Outside, the sun climbed over the frozen valley, and for the first time, Kevin didn't see a coffin. He saw a legacy. The book lay open on the table, its pages a silent witness to a truth that would reshape their winter. Kevin called the settlement to the trading post that evening. They came from every cabin, curious and half expecting a joke.
I mocked Anthony Harker's box bed. I called it a coffin, but I was wrong. And this book proves it. In Iceland, they call them staff beds. In Brittany, lit clothes. Whole families slept in them, sealed against the killing cold.
The crowd listened, the weight of Kevin's words sinking in. He gestured toward Anthony, who stepped forward.
It's not magic. It's just a small, still pocket of air. Your own body warms it, and the box keeps that warmth from leaving.
He held up the simple vent plug and explained the sealing. There were no more questions, only nods.
We built one for the Harlow baby. She was blue, near dead, this morning. She was crying strong and pink. I saw it with my own eyes.
A logger named Callum stepped forward, his voice rough. If it saved the Harlow baby, I'll build one tonight. Others murmured agreement. By the iron stove, Anthony began sketching plans on scraps of paper for anyone who asked. By the time the lanterns guttered low, the closed bed was no longer a curiosity. It was a winter necessity, born anew. Spring came slow and gentle, melting the frozen creeks and painting the meadow green. Eli raced across the new grass, his laughter carrying on the breeze, lungs strong, cheeks pink.
Look at him, Anthony. Last winter, I thought we'd lose him. Now he's chasing butterflies.
The box bed didn't just save his life, Maggie. It gave us back our spring.
Later, Kevin walked past, a bundle of shingles on his shoulder. He paused, nodding toward the open box bed sitting in the sun.
Airing it out for summer, Harker. Smart. It'll be ready when the cold comes back.
By evening, the valley was dotted with cabins, each one holding a silent, warm silhouette of a closed bed. In the Harker home, Anthony rested his hand on the smooth pine door, the grain worn smooth by winter. He slid it closed for the last time that season, the soft click echoing not of confinement but of protection. Outside, the valley rested easy, knowing the closed bed, once called a coffin, had become a cradle of life. Summer's warmth held until the first frost painted the meadow white. Then the old dread crept back into the valley.
The Stearns still won't build a box bed. Mrs. Harlow told me their baby's cough is back with the cold.
They call it superstition still, but when the freeze comes, superstition won't keep a child alive.
A heavy knock sounded. Kevin stood in the doorway, snow already clinging to his coat, his face grim.
The Stearns' baby is bad, Anthony. They're too proud to ask, but I heard the cough through the wall.
We go now. Bring the spare planks from the lean-to. We'll build one there, whether they want it or not.
They trudged through the new snow to the farthest cabin, Anthony's heart heavy with the cost of this intrusion.
Mr. Stern, your child is dying. Let us build the bed. You can burn it after, if you hate it. But let the baby live first.
The father's resistance crumbled as his wife pushed past, tear-streaked, and shoved the bundled infant into Kevin's arms. They worked through the night, the Stearns watching in stony silence. By dawn, the new box bed was sealed, and a thin wail rose from inside. The wail softened into a steady breath, and the bluish tint of the baby's lips faded to a healthy pink. Mrs. Stern fell to her knees, sobbing thanks into her hands. Mr. Stern stood rigid, then spoke, his voice rough. "I was a fool, Harker. My pride nearly killed my child." Anthony answered, "Pride is a colder killer than any winter, but he's alive now. That's what matters."
Every baby we save is another nail in the coffin of my old ignorance. I'll help build as many as we need.
On the walk back, Anthony staggered. Kevin caught his arm. "You've been running on empty since October," Kevin said quietly.
You can't keep doing this alone, Anthony. You are not a young man anymore.
If I stop, children die. Maggie, what choice is there?
But as he sat by the fire, the weight of every calloused plank pressed on his chest, he knew he couldn't be the only one.
Tomorrow, I'll hold a workshop. Anyone who wants to learn, come. Kevin, you'll help me teach them.
I'll be there, and I'll bring all the lumber I've got.
By midday, the trading yard was filled with men and women, some holding axes, others just watching. Kevin stood beside Anthony, the book from the old country in his hand. Anthony stepped onto a crate, his voice hoarse but steady. He held up the simple vent plug, a wooden stopper wrapped in cloth.
This here is the secret. Your body warms the air around you. The box just keeps that warmth from escaping. Don't make it too tight, a little vent for fresh air, and you'll stay warm without suffocating.
It's not complicated, but it has to be tight. Measure the joints, seal the seams. Your family's breath is the only fuel you need.
A young settler named Ellen raised her hand, her voice trembling with hope. "Could I build one for my mother? She's been so cold."
Yes, we'll help you. In fact, we'll help everyone. By winter's end, there won't be a child shivering in this valley.
By mid-afternoon, the yard clattered with hammers and saws. Kevin moved among the groups, correcting joints, sharing his own lumber.
Tighter on that corner, Callum. If you can see daylight through the crack, your heat will leak out.
As the sun sank, Anthony leaned against a sawhorse, his hands trembling with fatigue. Margaret brought him a cup of broth, her eyes full of worry.
You've given everything, Anthony. Now let them carry it. Rest tonight.
He nodded, watching the first box bed in the yard take shape under lantern light. The closed bed was no longer just his burden. It belonged to the valley now. That winter, the first deep freeze came early. A brutal cold that painted the windows white. But this time, the valley was ready. In a dozen cabins, families sealed themselves into their box beds. No child coughed through the night. No mother wept beside a frozen cradle. In the Harlow cabin, the baby, now a sturdy 2-year-old, breathed soft and even inside the same box bed that had saved her life.
This valley is different now. The cold still comes, but it won't take anyone else. Not on my watch.
The house is so quiet. I used to dread the silence. It meant the cold was winning. Now it just means everyone is warm.
Anthony stood on the porch, breath misting. The stars were sharp in the black sky, and the closed bed hummed with life behind him.
I didn't invent anything. I just remembered what the dead knew, how to turn a coffin into a cradle.
Inside, Eli slept soundly, one hand pressed against the smooth wood of the door, as if to keep the warmth sealed in. The closed bed had done more than trap warmth. It had bound a community, turning strangers into neighbors who built each other's sanctuaries. And when spring returned, the book would travel to other valleys, carrying the lesson forward that a simple pine box, closed against the dark, could hold a whole winter's worth of life. 5 winters later, Anthony sat on the porch, his hair now snow-white, watching Eli help a young family plane boards for their first box bed.
Make sure the vent is just the size of your thumb. Too big and the heat escapes, too small and the candle goes out.
You taught him well. He's carrying on what you started, Anthony.
He's not carrying me, Maggie. He's carrying the dead, the ones we nearly joined, and the ones who showed us how to live.
Kevin, gray-bearded now, walked over with a sack of nails slung over his shoulder. He knelt to check the tightness of a corner joint.
Tighter than a drum. This one will outlast us all. I've built 37 closed beds since the first one you showed me, Anthony.
37 families that sleep warm because a man stopped laughing and picked up a hammer. That's a good number, Kevin.
As dusk fell, the hills glowed with tiny warm lights from 100 closed beds, each one a spark that refused to be extinguished. Anthony walked inside, past the box bed he had built so long ago, its wood darkened by years of warm hands and steady breath. He touched the door, feeling the faint vibration of life inside, his family safe, sealed against the dark. The closed bed had become their eternal hearth. Later that night, as the fire dwindled to ember, Anthony slid the box bed door shut. The familiar click echoed through the cabin, the sound of a promise kept.
All those years ago, you drew a picture on a scrap of bark. I thought it was madness. Now I can't imagine winter without it.
It was never madness, Maggie. It was memory. Folks died because they forgot. We won't forget again.
37 beds. 37 families who won't wake to frozen tears. I was a fool, but I am not anymore.
Inside the Harker box bed, Eli lay with a book under the candle's glow. The very same book Kevin had discovered years ago. He traced a diagram of an Icelandic Stoff bed, and for a moment, the centuries collapsed, the dead and the living breathing together. Outside, the valley slept under a thick quilt of stars. 100 box beds hummed with quiet, steady life, a fortress against the dark.
We didn't build a bed. We built a bridge. The dead walked across it and handed us their warmth. Now we'll pass it on.
The last ember in the hearth faded to gray. The closed bed stood silent, a golden seam of candlelight visible through the vent. Then gone, dawn broke over the valley, painting the snow in hues of rose and gold. Not a single cough echoed in the stillness.
I spent my youth laughing at coffins. Now I spend my old age building them, and everyone is a cradle.
I used to dread the winter. Now I welcome it, because it's when our home feels most alive.
What we built wasn't just shelter. It was a promise that no one here would freeze alone again.
The book, worn and annotated, rested on the Harker's table. its pages open to a drawing of a lit close. Eli had added his own notes in the margins, instructions for vent sizing and seam sealing. Outside, the valley's 100 windows glowed like a constellation fallen to earth, a map of survival. Anthony closed his eyes, the box bed's door firm against his back, and listened to the silence. The wind outside could rage and bite, but inside, the pocket of still air held its sacred warmth, and in the morning, the vent would be open to a new day, and the thread would continue. Morning light seeped through the vent as Anthony slid the door open. Eli stirred, then reached for the well-worn book on the shelf.
One day, I'll take this book to the next valley over. They need to know.
They'll listen. They always do once the frost bites.
Years later, the book would journey to a distant settlement where shivering children had never seen a closed bed, and in the Harker cabin, the old closed bed stood like a monument, weathered, silent, and never empty.
42. I'll stop counting when the last baby sleeps warm.
I used to think winter was a season of dying. Now I know it's a season of staying warm, staying together.
The thread stretched on, from the old country to the new, from grandfather's memory to a boy's scribbled note. In every valley, the closed bed became more than wood. It was a covenant that the night would not win, and the cold would not take another child. And as long as the flame flickered through the vent, there was life.